This is Forgotten Patriots. I'm Rick Robison. The Spartan sacrifice. Without morality, freedom dies. In 490 BC, the vastly outnumbered Athenians faced a powerful Persian invasion force of 25,000 men on the plains of Marathon, sent by the king of the world, Darius the Great. Against what many thought impossible odds, the Greeks, heavily outnumbered, they defeated the Persian invaders. Under the leadership of General Miltiades, they advanced at a run across open ground, and they closed the distance before Persian archers could unleash devastating volleys of arrows. The Greek hoplites, fighting as brothers in tight formations, divided the Persian forces on the wings, then turned inward and slaughtered the center. Despite being outnumbered more than 2-1, the Athenians outfought them, killing 6,400 and forcing the rest to flee to their ships. That victory was vital to the history of freedom. It included the story of Phidippides, who ran the 26 miles from Marathon to Athens to warn Athens of the Persian invasion force that was coming their way by sea. After delivering the critical message of warning, Phidippides collapsed and he died right there before the people of Athens, further immortalizing the man and, of course, the event. In 480 BC, a decade later, the Persian Empire had a new tyrant, King Xerxes I, Xerxes the Great. He was Darius' eldest son. In revenge for his father's loss, Xerxes launched a massive invasion of Greece. The Persian army consisted of approximately 200,000 men. Standing against them was a tiny allied Greek force of hoplites, moving quickly to cut off the Persian army at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, known as the Hot Gates, just northwest of Athens. The Greek contingent of several thousand was led by King Leonidas of Sparta and his famed 300 Spartan warriors. For 3 days, the Spartans brilliantly used the narrow terrain to neutralize the Persians' overwhelming numbers. Fighting in tight phalanx formation, they repelled repeated assaults, inflicting heavy casualties on these Middle Eastern invaders. The narrow pass prevented the Persians from surrounding them, turning the battle into a brutal test of endurance and wills in close order fighting. These were advantages that heavily favored the superbly conditioned and disciplined Spartan hoplites. The turning point came when a Greek trader, Ephialtes, revealed a secret mountain trail that allowed the Persian forces to slip men around and behind and outflank the Spartans. Hearing of their betrayal and realizing encirclement was soon to come, in fact, it would come right away, Leonidas told the allied Greek troops who were with him to retreat, thus to save their lives to fight another day. But he remained with his 300 Spartans, along with several hundred other Greek volunteers, to make a final stand. Their honor would not allow the Spartans to retreat an inch when protecting their families, their land, and their freedom. The Spartans held the pass as long as possible before being surrounded and overwhelmed. They fought to the last man. Though a tactical defeat, because of the selfless sacrifice of the Spartan defenders, Thermopylae became a great moral victory, one we've remembered for 2,500 years. At the pass of Thermopylae, an inscription remembers Leonidas' final testimony. It reads, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to our honor, we lie." Surrender for the Spartans was not an option. The sacrifices made at Marathon and Thermopylae are remembered because the choice of the few, or even the one, has so many times in history shaped our past. That next year, August 479 BC, with the Greeks now united, they faced the Persian army on the plains of Plataea, just northwest of Athens. This time, the massive Persian hordes were not facing a token army of 300 men, but 10,000 Spartan heavy hoplites leading a combined Greek force of 40,000. At Plataea, the Spartans knifed through Persian lines, and they slaughtered up to 75,000 of them. Combined with the sea battle at Salamis, where 300 Greek triremes, these were multi-level oared ships, faced 700 Persian warships, the Persians were defeated decisively, frustrating the plans of Xerxes, the god king. These few Greek heroes stopped a freedom-killing Middle Eastern political system and culture from overwhelming Europe. Christian civilization would come later and was allowed to flourish, due in large part to those who had sacrificed their lives at Marathon and Thermopylae. Why does this matter today? Why do we talk about it? In fact, we talk about it in great respect. Well, when the Greek ships plunged into battle at Salamis, they were not propelled by slaves at the oars, as were the Persian ships, but they were led and rowed into battle by free men fighting for their wives and children. They fought for liberty, not conquest, slaves, or profit. And how do we know this? Because as the Greek triremes raced into battle against the massive Persian navy, the Greeks at the oars synchronized their strokes by chanting in unison, Eleftheria, 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 freedom, freedom, freedom. The concept of individual liberty, while we may take it for granted, is a priceless gift in human history, one that is always bought and paid for dearly. Despite the grandeur, the majesty of the mighty pyramids and the magnificent Egyptian temple cities, the Egyptians did not have a word for the concept of individual freedom. In ancient Mesopotamia, there was a word in Akkadian for freedom, but it actually meant the limited liberties that a king bestows upon his subjects, thralls, or vassals. The ancient Chinese empires, though advanced in many ways, did not have a word in the vocabulary for individual personal freedom. It just didn't exist. The concept of God-given, inherent, unalienable freedom is a Western, particularly Christian concept. Besides Israel, only nations influenced by the Greeks have ever embraced the idea of personal freedom. As the great historian and philosopher Leo Strauss tells us, and he sums it up very well, it's Athens and Jerusalem. Everything else is just commentary. Our founders knew that without a keen understanding of history, we would never survive as a free republic. From the beginning, tyranny has always plagued mankind, and it's known by historians as the totalitarian temptation. You'll see the warnings in the writings of Ayn Rand, Hannah Arendt, and of course Friedrich Hayek, that won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work. The threat remains. Look no further than what's happening in New York City with the election of an avowed hardcore socialist in Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Imagine, in the United States of America, our principal, most famous city, the desperate promises the moon and stars, but delivers only chains. Our founders studied the empires that filled the earth from the beginning, returning always to ancient Greece and the miracles of Marathon and Thermopylae. The Greeks prevailed because they were free men, and because the Persian kings were despotic dictators who committed hubris, or outrageous arrogance. Hubris, remember that word. We saw that in the actions of the great Persian king Xerxes when he took out his whips and he lashed the unruly waves of the Bosphorus Sea in order to punish the waters for daring defy the god king. Persian leaders were corrupt, even evil. And how do we know this? Well, so many of them would not die of old age, but were assassinated while they were in office by other devious tyrant wannabes, usually family members. And great treachery, of course. In the Greek language, hubris can be translated as rape, in fact, that most self-serving, vile crime, victimizing the weak and innocent. This satanic sin of pride is the same that Lucifer displayed in the great war in heaven and in the Garden of Eden. We see this in Revelation 12, 7 through 12, and Genesis 3, 4 through 5. The Greeks understood that hubris is the one sin God hates and will not tolerate. The tens of thousands of Persians who died at Marathon, Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea were all victims of their king's own ungodly hubris and immorality. This is important, for right at the beginning of the development of individual freedom in history, we find the concept of liberty joining in eternal partnership with morality, standing firm against the unrighteous hubris of tyrants. This is not by accident, and it's vital to our understanding of true heroes and patriots. The American founders understood this well. One of the earliest works of freedom was written by the Greek Herodotus. He titled it The Histories. At its core, this writing, it was the history of liberty. And while freedom, humility, and personal morality are vital, absolutely vital, to a nation's survival, it's to die for. Herodotus made the case that free men and moral nations survive because they have God's favor. Freedom and morality births creativity and productivity, centered on freedom of thought, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why the various forms of tyranny, including socialism, never rise to the prosperity and opportunity of a truly free market economy. Why? Because socialism is essentially government theft forced on the people by corrupt and self-serving autocrats. By definition, socialism is hubris, where collectivists actually believe that they can control human nature and force it into their own image. Of course, that makes no sense to any clear thinker. In the end, Herodotus, who was given the title the father of history, offered future generations this warning. He said, "Do not go the way of the tyrannical and autocratic Persians." History proves that individual human liberty did not come about by accident. It did not come about by great geological, economic, or calamitous natural events. In truth, liberty comes from God through Judeo-Christianity. Unfiltered, true history so testifies. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both believed that Western civilization was the single, Western civ, was the single most important academic discipline. Yet in nearly every university today, this vital discipline has been canceled. For history not only teaches us what happened, but more importantly, why. The American Revolution and its declaration that all men are created equal is practically non-existent in the history of the world. It was literally born out of the Judeo-Christian faith of our fathers. Yes, freedom and morality are inseparable and always will be. Without morality, freedom dies on the vine. And without the freedom to choose, there can be no such thing as morality. Lacking morality, society deteriorates into chaos. It's a death spiral, in fact, one we are trapped in today, with few who seem to understand why and what to do. Never before in the great history of this nation are heroes and heroines needed more than they are today. I'm Rick Robison, and this is Forgotten Patriots.